The crystal glasses clinked softly in the renovated mansion as Alec Kincaid surveyed his empire from the head table at Denver's most exclusive restaurant. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the mahogany surface, a habit that made his subordinates tense with anticipation as negotiations for expanding territory continued around him. The waitstaff moved like ghosts between tables, their eyes carefully avoiding the corner where private security stood watch over Kincaid's meeting. Autumn rain tapped against stained glass windows, creating a hypnotic backdrop to hushed conversations about profit margins and territorial lines being redrawn across Colorado. Kincaid nodded once, causing an immediate silence to fall as he prepared to deliver his final verdict on the proposition before him. Power radiated from his measured movements, more threatening in their control than any display of brute force could ever be. The Southern District will remain under current management until the first quarter reports show consistent, he began, his voice cutting through the quiet room before the unexpected creak of the restaurant's heavy oak doors captured everyone's attention. The tension in the room shifted instantly from business to alert caution. His security team moved with practiced efficiency toward the interruption, hands already reaching for concealed weapons as a small figure darted between startled guests. The child couldn't have been more than 7, his oversized coat dripping rainwater onto imported marble tiles as he evaded the reaching hands of Kincaid's men. Something in the boy's determined expression made Kincaid raise a single finger, halting his security team's advance just as the child reached the edge of his table. The room held its collective breath, witnessing an unprecedented breach of Kincaid's carefully constructed barriers. "Hurry, my little sister is gone. Mommy is dying," the boy's voice rang out, clear and desperate in the stunned silence. His eyes, too old for his young face, locked with Kincaid's in a challenge no adult would dare attempt. Kincaid studied the boy for 3 heartbeats, noting the mud-spattered sneakers and the intelligent fear behind the brave facade. Something unexpected stirred within him, recognition of raw courage that mirrored his own beginnings decades ago on these same Denver streets. "Everyone out," Kincaid commanded, his tone leaving no room for question or hesitation. Chairs scraped against hardwood as business associates and rivals alike quickly gathered their belongings, casting curious glances at the unusual scene unfolding behind them. The maitre d' approached with a nervous smile, clearly intending to remove the child, but froze when Kincaid's cold gaze shifted in his direction. The restaurant emptied with remarkable speed, leaving only Kincaid, his closest lieutenant, and the dripping boy standing in the suddenly cavernous dining room. "Tell me everything," Kincaid said, gesturing to the chair beside him with a casualness that contradicted the intensity of his focus. The boy climbed up without hesitation, his feet dangling above the floor as he leaned forward with urgent purpose. "Men came to our apartment looking for someone who used to live there," the boy explained, his small hands gripping the edge of the table. "They took my sister when Mom tried to stop them, and before she passed out, she told me to find help here." Small fingers reached into a pocket, producing a crumpled business card for the restaurant, with a handwritten phone number on the back. Kincaid recognized the number immediately, a private line few possessed. Raising questions he temporarily set aside as he calculated his next move. "What's your name?" Kincaid asked, already signaling his lieutenant to bring the car around as he mentally rearranged the evening's priorities. The restaurant's exclusive location in Cherry Creek suddenly seemed fortuitous, rather than merely strategic. "Ben," the boy answered simply, already sliding from the chair as if sensing Kincaid's decision before it was verbalized. His small jaw set with determination that would have looked comical on a child in any other circumstance. The sleek black sedan cut through Denver's rain-slick streets, windshield wipers keeping perfect time with the tension building inside the vehicle. Ben sat forward on the leather seat, directing them through neighborhoods that grew progressively more modest with each passing block. Kincaid watched the boy carefully, noting how he scanned each intersection and landmark, with the heightened awareness of someone who had learned early that safety was never guaranteed. The contrast between the child's worn jacket and the car's luxury interior created a dissonance that nagged at Kincaid's usually focused mind. "4th floor, apartment 412, Ben announced as they pulled alongside a nondescript building where emergency lights flashed against brick walls. Medical personnel rushed a stretcher through double doors as Kincaid's driver parked with calculated distance from official vehicles. The hospital corridor's harsh fluorescent lighting made the blood on Ben's sneakers appear almost black as they followed behind the medical team. Nurses exchanged concerned glances at the unusual pair. The impeccably dressed businessman, and the disheveled child walking with matching purposeful strides. They need to know about her allergies, Ben insisted to the attending physician, who looked to Kincaid for confirmation before realizing the boy was the authority on the unconscious woman being transferred to trauma care. The doctor's assessment was delivered in hushed tones that Ben strained to understand. Kincaid placed a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder, surprised at the fragility he felt beneath the thin jacket. "Tell them everything they need to know," he instructed, his voice gentler than anyone who knew him would have thought possible. "She's a nurse here," Ben explained, straightening his small shoulders under Kincaid's hand. "That's how I knew where to bring her when we got away from the apartment. She works night shift in pediatrics." The revelation added another layer of complexity to the situation. The woman wasn't just any victim, but someone known to the hospital staff. Personnel began moving with increased urgency, a colleague's life now hanging in the balance rather than a stranger's. "My sister has a special bear," Ben continued, attention now fully on Kincaid. "She won't go anywhere without it, but they took her before she could grab it. It has a tracker Mom sewed inside. She's always worried about us." Kincaid's eyebrows raised slightly, the only indication of his surprise at this potentially critical information. He stepped away, phone already in hand as he contacted his network to trace the tracking device, mind calculating probabilities and resources needed for what had become an unexpected rescue mission. "They came looking for someone named Westbrook," Ben added, showing an uncanny ability to prioritize information that might help. "Mom kept saying they had the wrong place, that we only moved in 3 months ago, but they wouldn't listen." The name registered immediately in Kincaid's mental catalog, a former accountant who had disappeared after embezzling significant funds from several dangerous people. The pieces clicked into place with alarming clarity as Kincaid recognized his own indirect connection to this family's tragedy. "I need men at the hospital entrance, apartment building, and coordinated with the bear tracker," Kincaid instructed his lieutenant quietly, maintaining visual contact with Ben, who stood vigilant beside his mother's emergency room door. Full background on previous tenant Westbrook and current residents. Priority clearance. The hospital staff worked efficiently around the unconscious woman, their movements becoming more urgent when monitors began signaling complications. Ben pressed his forehead against the observation window, small fingers splayed against the glass, as if trying to reach through the barrier to his mother. "They'll find your sister," Kincaid stated with absolute certainty, as he returned to Ben's side, the promise carrying the weight of unspoken power behind it. "I need you to tell me everything you remember about the men who took her." Denver's skyline glittered through rain-streaked windows as Kincaid established a temporary command center in a private hospital waiting room. Maps of the city spread across tables while Ben carefully described the intruders with remarkable detail, from distinctive shoes to partial conversations overheard from his hiding place. "The tall one kept checking his phone and saying something about docs," Ben recalled, fatigue evident in his slumping shoulders despite his determination to stay focused. "And the one with the scar called someone named Price for new instructions when they realized Mom wasn't who they wanted." Kincaid's network mobilized with silent efficiency, information flowing through encrypted channels as warehouse districts and shipping operations came under discreet surveillance. The boy's memory proved invaluable, each detail narrowing the search parameters across Denver's sprawling urban landscape. A nurse appeared with update on the mother's condition, stabilized but critical, along with a hesitant question about relation to patient that Kincaid deflected with practiced ease. The bureaucratic obstacles that would normally complicate such situations dissolved under his influence, creating a protective bubble around Ben and his hospitalized mother. "Your sister, what's special about her that would make them keep her safe?" Kincaid asked, instinctively understanding that predicting captors' behavior required knowing what might temper their actions. His experience with hostage situations, though from a different perspective, provided valuable insight into the psychology at play. Ben's eyes brightened slightly despite his exhaustion. "She carries a plastic magnifying glass everywhere. Says she's a detective solving mysteries. She notices everything and asks a million questions. Mom says she's too smart for her own good sometimes." The image of the small girl with her magnifying glass investigating her captors, despite danger, struck Kincaid with unexpected force. Children rarely factored into his world of calculated risks and strategic maneuvers. Yet here he was, deploying resources typically reserved for territory defense to find one small detective with a plastic tool. "She sings when she's scared," Ben added softly, rubbing tired eyes with small fists. "Always the same song Mom taught us about brave explorers. If they tried to keep her quiet, That would make her sing louder. She's stubborn like that. This information triggered an immediate refinement in search parameters. Audio surveillance now focused on picking up a child's singing voice in the vicinity of dockside warehouses. Kincaid's tech specialist remotely accessed security systems throughout the target area, scanning for any unusual activity or sound patterns. Reports began filtering in from field operatives positioned across Denver's industrial areas, each negative update increasing the tension in Kincaid's normally impassive expression. The tracking device in the bear had remained frustratingly silent, likely disabled or contained in a signal-blocking location. "You should rest," Kincaid told Ben, noting the boy fighting to keep his eyes open as midnight approached. "I'll wake you the moment we have news." The promise seemed to release something in the child, who finally allowed himself to curl up in an oversized chair, though his hand remained clutching Kincaid's expensive suit sleeve. The unexpected contact created a strange anchor point for Kincaid, as he continued coordinating the search operation around the sleeping child. Each decision he made now carried the weight of Ben's trust, something far more consequential than the business matters he'd abandoned earlier that evening. Kincaid's lieutenant arrived with secured footage from the apartment building's surveillance system, providing clear images of the intruders and their vehicle. Recognition dawned immediately. Hired muscle working for a rival operation. Their target clearly the missing accountant, rather than the nurse and her children. "Get me everything on the mother," Kincaid instructed quietly, careful not to wake Ben as he studied the hospital records his influence had procured. "I need to understand why she had my private number and what connection exists to Westbrook's disappearance." The answer came at dawn. Hospital records revealing the nurse had treated Westbrook's daughter during a medical emergency months earlier, forming a brief connection before he vanished. The accountant's final act had been leaving her the restaurant's information with Kincaid's number, calling it insurance, should trouble ever find her. Sunlight filtered through hospital blinds as Ben awoke, momentarily disoriented until his eyes found Kincaid's imposing figure by the window. The mafia leader's jacket was draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up as he studied maps spread across an improvised workstation while maintaining quiet phone conversations. "Mom," was Ben's first question, as he rubbed sleep from his eyes, immediately followed by, "My sister?" His priorities remained unwavering despite the surreal circumstances that had thrust him into alliance with one of Denver's most powerful underworld figures. Kincaid handed the boy a paper cup of hot chocolate from the nurse's station, a surprisingly thoughtful gesture from a man who typically delegated such tasks. "Your mother is stable. Surgery was successful. No word yet on your sister, but we've narrowed the search area significantly." Ben nodded solemnly, accepting both the drink and information with equal gravity as he joined Kincaid at the maps. His small finger traced neighborhoods with surprising knowledge of the city's layout, pointing out shortcuts through service alleys and parks that wouldn't appear on standard navigation systems. "These warehouses connect underground," he explained, indicating a section near the river docks. "Mom's friend works security there. He showed us once. Said it was from Prohibition times, when they needed to move things secretly." Kincaid reassessed his strategy instantly, recognizing the value of knowledge that even his extensive network had overlooked. He summoned his lieutenant with new instructions, incorporating Ben's insight with the efficiency of someone accustomed to adapting plans when presented with superior intelligence. A doctor entered with update charts, surprised to find the young boy engaged in what appeared to be serious consultation with the intimidating businessman. The medical staff had long since stopped questioning Kincaid's presence or authority, his generous donation to the hospital ensuring privacy and cooperation. "She's asking for Ben," the doctor informed them, unable to hide his relief at delivering positive news. "Still weak, but conscious and oriented. She's quite concerned about her daughter. We had to promise we'd bring Ben immediately to keep her calm." Ben looked to Kincaid, a wordless communication passing between them that acknowledged their unusual bond forged through crisis. The boy's trust in this dangerous man had been given completely, based not on Kincaid's reputation, but on his actions since their paths had crossed. "You go," Kincaid decided, passing Ben a secure phone. "I'll continue the search from here. Press this button if you need me, or if your mother remembers anything else that might help us find your sister." The weight of the device in Ben's small hand seemed to solidify their partnership more than any spoken agreement. He nodded once, a miniature mirror of Kincaid's own decisive gesture, before following the doctor toward his mother's recovery room, with shoulders squared against uncertainty. Kincaid turned back to his maps, mind calculating probabilities with cold precision, while his network continued systematic grid searches across industrial zones. The unfamiliar feeling of urgency for someone outside his organization disturbed his usual detachment, creating an emotional investment he hadn't experienced in years. New information arrived from surveillance teams. A suspicious delivery to an abandoned fish processing plant near the river. Sealed crates moved under unusually heavy guard for such a seemingly minor operation. Thermal imaging detected multiple heat signatures inside, including one significantly smaller than the others. Kincaid's normal protocol would involve overwhelming force, a statement made through controlled violence that would reverberate through Denver's underworld. Instead, he found himself constructing a plan centered around minimizing risk to one small hostage, a strategic shift that puzzled his most loyal operatives. Prepare for extraction at the processing plant, he instructed his team through encrypted channels. Surveillance only until I arrive. The target is a 4-year-old girl with a magnifying glass. Any harm to the child will have severe consequences. His phone vibrated with Ben's assigned tone, the screen displaying a simple message. Mom says they kept talking about fish and ice. This final confirmation solidified the target location. The boy's continued partnership proving invaluable even from his mother's hospital bedside. Laura Stevens opened her eyes to find her son's worried face beside her hospital bed, his small hand clutching hers with fierce protectiveness. The pain medication clouded her thoughts, but maternal instinct cut through the fog as she immediately tried to rise, urgently asking about her daughter. "Someone's helping us find her," Ben assured with surprising confidence, showing unusual maturity as he gently guided his mother back against the pillows. "He's important and has lots of people looking everywhere in the city right now." Laura's medication-dulled mind struggled to process this information, alarm growing as she recalled fragments of the home invasion, masked men demanding information about someone named Westbrook, her desperate attempt to protect her children, the business card she'd instructed Ben to take to the restaurant as a last resort before losing consciousness. "Who is helping you?" she asked, fear evident, as the implications of contacting the number on that card began to surface through her mental haze. The previous tenant's cryptic warning about powerful insurance suddenly carried new meaning as she studied her son's calm demeanor. Before Ben could answer, the hospital room door opened to reveal Kincaid himself, his commanding presence filling the sterile space despite his deliberately casual stance. Laura's nursing experience had exposed her to various power dynamics, but she instantly recognized the barely contained authority radiating from this stranger. "Your son found me," Kincaid stated simply, maintaining a respectful distance from the bed as he assessed her condition with analytical precision. "I've located your daughter, and am preparing to bring her back safely." Laura struggled to sit upright despite her surgical pain, maternal protectiveness overriding medical prudence as she faced this unexpected development. "Who are you, and why would you help us? We have nothing valuable to offer in return." The directness of her question, devoid of the fearful deference Kincaid typically encountered, caught him momentarily off guard. Her fierce protectiveness, despite obvious physical weakness, created an unexpected resonance with his own carefully guarded values of loyalty and protection. "My reasons are irrelevant at the moment," Kincaid replied, his tone softening almost imperceptibly. "What matters is that your daughter is currently being held at an abandoned processing plant by people who mistook your family for someone else." Laura's medical training allowed her to compartmentalize emotion, focusing on practical information that might help her child. "She sings when she's frightened, a specific song about explorers finding treasures, and she never goes anywhere without her magnifying glass. Studies everything like it's evidence." Kincaid nodded, filing away this confirmation of Ben's earlier description as he moved toward the door. "I'll return with your daughter within 3 hours. The hospital security has been enhanced, and my people will ensure both of you remain safe until then." "Wait," Laura called out, momentarily setting aside her suspicion as maternal concern took precedence. "She's allergic to penicillin, and she trusts too easily. She'll talk to anyone who shows interest in her detective work. Please be careful with her." Something in this vulnerable disclosure from a woman who clearly distrusted him struck Kincaid deeply, adding personal weight to what had begun as an abstract exercise in power and territory. The responsibility of this small detective's safety settled on him with unexpected significance. "I give you my word," he responded, the promise carrying weight beyond anything contractual or strategic. For the first time in years, Kincaid made a commitment, based not on advantage or calculation, but on something resembling genuine human connection. As he left the room, Laura turned to her son with questioning eyes, seeking explanation for this bizarre alliance. Ben's response was simple but profound. "He listened when I told him you were dying. No one else would have stopped for a kid like that. Laura processed this information, medical training and maternal instinct combining to assess the complex situation. "Tell me everything," she requested, her voice stronger than before as determination to understand this dangerous new development overcame physical weakness. Kincaid's black sedan cut through Denver's industrial district as afternoon shadows lengthened across abandoned warehouses and rusting equipment. His driver navigated with practiced discretion, while Kincaid reviewed thermal imaging feeds, showing 7 adults and 1 child-sized heat signature inside the targeted fish processing plant. The girls being kept in what appears to be a former office on the 2nd floor, his security chief reported, pointing to building schematics obtained through city records. 2 guards posted outside the door, remaining 5 rotating throughout the building perimeter. Kincaid assessed multiple extraction scenarios, calculating risks with the cold precision that had built his empire, yet each plan circled back to one priority that would have been unthinkable just 24 hours earlier: the absolute safety of a 4-year-old girl with her plastic magnifying glass. The radio crackled with surveillance updates, including an unexpected detail that shifted Kincaid's expression from concentration to genuine surprise. "Sir, we're picking up singing from the 2nd floor." A child's voice, something about treasure maps and brave explorers, exactly as described. This confirmation triggered Kincaid's decisive action, but not with the display of force his lieutenants anticipated. Instead, he instructed his driver to approach the facility's main entrance directly, ordering his security teams to maintain perimeter positions without engaging unless signaled. "The child's presence confirms this is Westbrook's doing," Kincaid explained to his bewildered security chief. "He anticipated potential trouble and deliberately left my contact information with the nurse who treated his daughter, creating a contingency plan that ironically activated when others came looking for him." The accountant's strategy now appeared elegant in its simplicity, knowing Kincaid would recognize the value of recovering what others sought, while betting that a mother's occupation as a pediatric nurse might trigger an uncharacteristic moment of compassion in Denver's most calculating crime lord. Kincaid straightened his tie as the car stopped before the plant's rusted entrance gates, his decision to approach directly, rather than through stealth or force, representing a strategic departure that reflected his evolving perspective since Ben's interruption at the restaurant. "Price," Kincaid acknowledged as a familiar figure emerged from the shadows of the loading dock, recognition flashing across the man's weathered face. "I believe you're holding something that belongs to me, through a rather unfortunate misunderstanding." The revelation of direct connection between captors and Kincaid shifted the power dynamic instantly, uncertainty evident in Price's defensive posture. "This was a contracted acquisition related to Westbrook's accounts. We had no indication of your involvement in this matter." Kincaid maintained calculated calm, years of negotiating dangerous territory evident in his measured response. "Circumstances have changed. The family residing in Westbrook's former apartment is under my protection, particularly the child you're currently holding upstairs." Price's expression betrayed internal conflict, weighing the consequences of refusing Kincaid against the repercussions of failing his original contract. The singing from upstairs continued, a surreal soundtrack to this tense negotiation between forces that typically operated through intimidation rather than discussion. "Our employer will require compensation for the failed acquisition," Price ventured carefully, seeking a face-saving compromise that acknowledged Kincaid's superior position without appearing to capitulate completely. "The information Westbrook took remains valuable to multiple interested parties." Kincaid nodded once, already anticipating this negotiation point. "I'll address the Westbrook situation personally. Your employer will receive appropriate compensation for operational expenses, provided the child is released immediately, completely unharmed." The arrangement was settled with the efficiency of experienced professionals, an exchange of assurances wrapped in careful euphemisms that maintained necessary appearances of strength. Price dispatched one of his men to retrieve the girl, whose singing had grown notably louder during their conversation. Kincaid remained outwardly impassive, as small footsteps descended the metal staircase, though his hand tightened imperceptibly around his phone. The child appeared clutching her plastic magnifying glass, remarkably composed despite the circumstances, as she studied each adult with obvious curiosity. "Are you a friend of my brother?" she asked Kincaid directly, her analytical gaze moving between him and Price with surprising perception. "Ben said he'd find someone smart to help when the bad men came. Are you the smart person?" Kincaid knelt to the child's eye level, an action so uncharacteristic that his security team exchanged startled glances. "Yes, your brother Ben sent me to find you. My name is Alec, And I'm taking you to see your mom and Ben at the hospital now." The girl held her magnifying glass up to Kincaid's face, studying him with serious concentration before pronouncing her verdict. "You have kind eyes hiding behind scary ones. That's what Mom says to look for when you're in trouble. The kindness hiding in people." This unexpected assessment momentarily disarmed Kincaid, creating a pause that his years of careful self-control couldn't quite mask. He recovered quickly, extending his hand with formal gravity that acknowledged her perceptiveness, rather than dismissing it as childish observation. "I found a clue," she whispered confidentially, as she slipped her small hand into his much larger one. "The man with the scar has pictures of the docks in his phone. I saw when he was talking about someone named Westbrook while I pretended to sleep." Kincaid filed this information away, while maintaining his focus on the immediate priority of extraction, nodding to Price with finality that signaled their business was concluded. The exchange of a child for unspoken future considerations represented a transaction unlike any previously conducted in Denver's underworld hierarchy. The security team formed a protective formation as Kincaid guided the girl toward the waiting sedan, her plastic magnifying glass now trained on the vehicle's bulletproof windows with scientific fascination. She showed remarkable composure for a child who had endured abduction, her analytical mind apparently processing the experience as an adventure rather than trauma. "Will my bear find us?" she asked, as Kincaid secured her in the back seat, concern finally breaking through her detective persona. "He has a special chip inside so he never gets lost, but they wouldn't let me bring him when they took me from our apartment." Kincaid produced a small backpack from beside his seat, containing the tracking-enabled teddy bear his team had recovered during their surveillance of the captor's previous movements. The stuffed animal had provided crucial confirmation of the processing plant location before the battery died, its final electronic signal contributing to this unlikely rescue. The girl's face transformed with joy as she clutched the bear tightly, whispering secrets into its worn fur, before looking up at Kincaid with newfound trust. "You really are the smart person Ben promised. No one else would have found Mr. Detective Bear." Throughout the drive to the hospital, she maintained a steady stream of observations about her captors, details about routines, conversations overheard, and distinguishing characteristics that surpassed what many trained adults might have noticed. Her natural investigative instincts had transformed a traumatic experience into an information-gathering mission. "They were scared of someone," she noted while examining the car's interior with her magnifying glass. "The one with the funny walk kept saying, 'He'll have our heads if we don't find it,' whenever he looked at me. I think they took the wrong detective for their case." This innocent assessment contained critical intelligence about the larger situation, confirming Kincaid's suspicion that multiple factions were pursuing Westbrook's missing financial records. The child had unwittingly become central to a complex power struggle extending far beyond a simple case of mistaken identity. The hospital's side entrance allowed for discreet arrival, avoiding media attention that had begun gathering as news of the abduction reached local outlets. Kincaid's influence ensured clear pathways through service corridors, his security team maintaining vigilant perimeter control as they approached Laura's room. Ben spotted them first, his face appearing in the doorway before breaking into a sprint down the corridor toward his sister. The children collided in a fierce embrace, their mother's relieved sob audible from the hospital room as she attempted to rise from her bed despite medical equipment restricting movement. "You kept your word," Laura acknowledged, as Kincaid entered behind the reunited siblings, her expression a complex mixture of gratitude, wariness, and dawning recognition of exactly who stood before her. The pediatric nurse who treated society's most vulnerable children now found herself indebted to a man who operated in shadows she'd only glimpsed through emergency room admissions. Kincaid maintained a respectful distance as the family reunion unfolded, the unfamiliar warmth in his chest at this successful outcome, both unsettling and oddly satisfying. For the first time in years, his power had been directed toward protection rather than control, creating an outcome that couldn't be measured in territory or profit. 3 weeks passed before Laura received medical clearance to leave the hospital, her recovery monitored by specialists whose attentiveness suggested influence beyond standard insurance coverage. The children had remained by her side, hospital administrators making unprecedented accommodations that left nursing staff speculating about their mysterious benefactor. "We can't go back to our apartment," Laura stated as discharge papers were finalized, her tone making it clear this wasn't a question, but a decision already determined. Ben and his sister exchanged glances, their shared experience having created a silent communication system that adults weren't privy to. Kincaid stepped into the room with timing that suggested he'd been monitoring the discharge process, his presence now accepted rather than questioned by hospital staff. Arrangements have been made for temporary housing until more permanent options can be secured. Security will remain in place throughout the transition. Laura studied him carefully, professional assessment combining with maternal instinct as she considered their situation. Why are you still helping us? The rescue is complete. Your obligation, whatever it was, has been fulfilled. This direct challenge to his continued involvement was delivered without the fear or deference Kincaid typically encountered, her steady gaze demanding honesty, rather than the calculated half-truths he employed in business. The children watched this exchange with obvious interest, recognizing its importance to their future. Westbrook's former associates believe your family possesses information that doesn't exist, Kincaid explained, respecting her intelligence enough to offer the unvarnished situation. Until this misconception is permanently corrected, your safety remains at risk, a risk I'm uniquely positioned to mitigate. The practical logic of his explanation provided acceptable framework for continued assistance without addressing the unspoken reality that something fundamental had shifted in Kincaid's priorities since a determined 7-year-old boy had interrupted his business dinner 3 weeks earlier. Laura recognized the deliberate omission, but chose not to challenge it directly, instead focusing on immediate practicalities as she gathered the children's few belongings. We'll need to retrieve essential items from the apartment: school records, medical information, irreplaceable photographs. The family's relocation to a secure brownstone in a quiet neighborhood proceeded with military precision, Kincaid's organization demonstrating unexpected efficiency in domestic matters. Security remained discreet but omnipresent, blending into the community while maintaining protective surveillance that gradually became part of the family's new normal. Kincaid found himself visiting the brownstone with increasing frequency in the weeks that followed, initially with logical pretexts related to security arrangements, before pretense gave way to honest acknowledgement of his interest in the family's adjustment. Laura's wariness gradually softened as she observed his genuine concern for the children's welfare. "You never answered my question from the hospital," she noted one evening after the children had gone to bed, her recovery progressing enough that she could move without wincing. "About why you're really helping us. The security explanation makes practical sense, but it doesn't explain your personal involvement." Kincaid considered his response carefully, unaccustomed to the transparency this woman somehow elicited from him. "Your son interrupted a business meeting that no one would dare disturb. He showed courage that impressed me, reminded me of choices I made long ago, when protecting what mattered required unexpected action." The admission created a momentary vulnerability that Laura recognized but didn't exploit, instead offering her own truth in exchange. "Ben has always seen things others miss. After his father abandoned us when my daughter was born, he took on responsibilities no child should have to carry. This shared confidence established new parameters for their interaction, mutual respect evident as conversation shifted to practical matters of the children's education and Laura's eventual return to nursing. The comfortable rhythm of their discussion extended long into the evening, neither acknowledging the unusual nature of their developing connection. Weeks turned to months as the family settled into their new home, Laura returning to hospital shifts while Kincaid quietly arranged specialized security protocols around her workplace. His presence became an accepted part of their lives, Sunday dinners evolving into tradition that his business associates learned not to interrupt, except for genuine emergencies. "You've changed," his lieutenant observed, after Kincaid rescheduled an important territory negotiation to attend the girls' school science fair. "This family has become more than a protection obligation. They've become personal priority." The warning came on a Tuesday afternoon, intelligence suggesting renewed interest in Westbrook's missing financial records, with focus shifting back to Laura's family as potential unwitting custodians of information hidden in their former apartment. Kincaid's network detected surveillance being established around the children's school and Laura's hospital. "We need to move them again," his security chief recommended, presenting evidence of the emerging threat pattern. "Perhaps consider relocating them outside Colorado entirely. Fresh identities, complete separation from anything connected to Denver or Westbrook." Kincaid studied the surveillance photos with cold fury, recognizing operatives associated with a rival organization expanding into his territory. The threat assessment was accurate, yet the proposed solution struck him as fundamentally wrong, erasing these people who had carved unexpected space in his carefully controlled existence. "Prepare defensive protocols but maintain current positions," he instructed instead, decision already forming as he considered alternatives that previous versions of himself would never have contemplated. I'll address the root cause directly. It's time for permanent resolution rather than perpetual protection. Laura sensed the shift immediately when Kincaid arrived at the brownstone that evening, her nursing experience having honed ability to detect subtle changes in demeanor that others might miss. She waited until the children were occupied with homework before confronting him in the kitchen, voice low but insistent. "Something's happened," she stated rather than asked, hands steady as she prepared dinner with practiced efficiency. "You've added security at both schools and the hospital. 2 new men watching the house, and Ben noticed someone following the bus this morning." Kincaid acknowledged her perception with slight nod, respecting her right to unfiltered information about threats to her family. "Westbrook's former employers are making another attempt to recover what they believe you possess. They're growing desperate as financial authorities close in on their operations." Laura absorbed this information without visible panic, prioritizing practical response over emotional reaction with the same composure she'd shown during hospital emergencies. "Do we need to leave Denver? The children are finally settling in, making friends, feeling secure, but their safety comes first." The question crystallized Kincaid's evolving perspective, presenting clear choice between continued defensive measures and addressing the underlying threat permanently. The decision represented potential sacrifice of business interests and territorial advantages he'd spent years securing through calculated maneuvers. "You don't need to leave," he stated with finality that suggested the matter had been thoroughly considered. "I've built my position in Denver through strategic application of information and influence. It's time to redirect those resources toward creating permanent security rather than temporary shelter." Understanding dawned in Laura's expression as she recognized the significant shift his statement represented. "You're talking about fundamental changes to your business operations, potentially sacrificing positions you've worked years to establish. Why would you make that choice for people who were strangers months ago?" Kincaid moved closer, the kitchen's warm domesticity contrasting with the gravity of decisions being discussed. "Your son walked into my restaurant and didn't see a crime lord. He saw someone who could help when it mattered most. That perspective changes things, makes certain priorities clearer than they've been in years." The transformation wasn't sudden, but culmination of subtle shifts occurring since Ben's desperate interruption. Redirection of resources from expansion to protection, reassessment of alliances based on values rather than advantage, strategic withdrawal from operations incompatible with the presence of a pediatric nurse, and 2 observant children in his life. "I won't disappear from your lives once this is resolved," Kincaid stated, the promise both declaration and question, as he gauged her response. "The changes I'm implementing aren't temporary measures, but permanent realignment of priorities, if that's acceptable to you and the children." Laura considered this careful articulation of intent, professional caution, balancing against personal recognition of what remained unspoken between them. "The children would miss your Sunday visits," she acknowledged, indirect acceptance of the deeper implication behind his statement. The next morning, Kincaid convened unprecedented meeting of Denver's territorial leaders, presenting comprehensive intelligence on financial irregularities that threatened stability across multiple operations. His proposal represented radical departure from traditional power dynamics, collaborative defense against external regulatory pressure rather than continued internal competition. "Our mutual adversary isn't each other, but federal authorities using Westbrook's records to dismantle established infrastructure," he explained, leveraging reputation for strategic foresight to sell this unexpected alliance. "Combining resources toward legitimate enterprise diversification provides sustainability that our current model cannot maintain." The transformation unfolded over subsequent months, legitimate businesses expanding while shadowed operations contracted, territorial disputes resolving through negotiation rather than force, strategic information sharing, creating collective security previously unimaginable in Denver's competitive underworld landscape. Laura observed the evolution with cautious optimism, her professional ethics gradually reconciling with her growing personal connection to a man whose choices now consistently prioritized protection over power. The children accepted these developments with simple practicality, Ben particularly approving of Kincaid's strategic redirection toward legitimate security consulting. "You're still the scariest person at school conferences," Ben noted with characteristic directness as they reviewed his science project one evening. "But now it's because you ask the best questions, not because teachers think you might have someone disappeared if they give me a bad grade." Kincaid's rare laugh filled the brownstone's comfortable living room, the sound representing freedom rarely experienced in his previous existence. The transformation remained incomplete, shadows of former operations requiring ongoing management, but the trajectory had been irreversibly altered by 3 desperate sentences from a determined child. "You found more than help that night at the restaurant," Laura observed as they stood watching the children playing in the backyard, spring sunlight illuminating the secure home that had developed from crisis. "You found your way back to the person you might have been before the world convinced you that power was the only protection worth having. Thank you for following this story to its conclusion. If you enjoyed this tale of transformation and redemption, please write in the comments where you're watching from around the world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who appreciates stories about unexpected connections that change lives. Your support helps me continue bringing these narratives to life each week.